Hello everyone, my name is Ruchi Parekh and I'm your host for The Good Coach today. Welcome to my podcast. This podcast is driven to tell stories about professionals and their journeys to what has led them to where they are today. My guest today has a doctorate in emotional intelligence, is a research geek and very passionate about the power of emotion. She supports leaders and teams to improve performance and productivity through psychological and emotional safety. Please welcome Dr. Sarah Whyte. Hi, Sarah. Welcome
Hello.
to my podcast. Thank you for coming and gracing our podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Same here. I and our guests and the audience are going to get such amazing insights from Sarah's pool of knowledge that I can't wait to get started. So let's dive right into it. So, Sarah, looking at your LinkedIn profile will get anyone impressed. You have a degree in psychology, a master's in education, and a doctorate in emotional intelligence. But there are always parts of one story that you don't find on a profile on social media. Share something about your journey that we wouldn't find online.
As I'm reflecting on this, the thing that really jumps up at me is that I made decisions about study and career choices. Probably you could describe it as almost on a whim, but I would probably
Wow.
say going with gut instinct. Well, so doing my doctorate came about because, well, I do love learning. I am a complete research geek, I have to say. You know that. I do love learning. I do love looking at the research, the science. I just find it so fascinating because that is like genuinely me. So I love the opportunity to explore different ideas and methods and researchers. I like concepts. I just love that stuff. So I've been doing my master's, and at the time I was still teaching. I started my career as a teacher. So I was doing my master's part-time. It all fitted in around work, like fine enough. Could do it in holidays, all the rest of it. And we had on one of our lecture days, one of the lecturers said, "Oh, if any of you would be interested in doing a doctorate, let's talk about that now." And my instant reaction was, "Oh, I'd get to be called doctor. I'm going to do it." Honestly,
That is an amazing story.
I'm
Sarah.
going to do it. And my second thought was, well, how hard can it be?
Just a couple of years, maybe half a decade or maybe 6-7 years.
It took me almost 10 years because I did it part-time.
Wow.
It took me 9 or 10 years to do. And it was the hardest thing I have done, both in terms of managing time and because I was working the whole time I did it. So I did it part-time. Well, in every spare hour, I was working, especially towards the end. And it was also the hardest thing I've ever done in terms of my own knowledge and understanding and the learning aspect of it. It was a real challenge. But once I've got into it, I was like, I feel like I'm committed now. I'm going to keep going with this and get that doctor title. And I'm so glad I did, because it really has opened doors. And I think it really adds that credibility to the work that I do now. So it's definitely been worthwhile. Plus the skills that I've picked up from doing it have been so helpful in things like planning workshops or writing a keynote, because I'm able to draw on up-to-date scientific evidence-based research, which is so important, especially when people misunderstand research or misquote it, or a lot of people use outdated research without realizing, because even accessing the research papers is almost a skill in itself. It's a difficult thing to do. So I am so grateful for the skills that I've developed through that academic research. But yeah, I did it because I wanted to be called doctor. That is honestly the reason I did it.
I love that. But and you're so right. Research, trying to get research done, and I was working on my TED Talk. To manage that research was truly a skill. I thought I did have that skill because there is just so much information out there, many of which is not quite true, also, I believe. And you have to be very careful with what you pick up that is actual, correct, evidence based, science based research versus something from WhatsApp University. So yes.
or Facebook University as well. I think it's that whole thing, isn't it, that especially with things like the neuroscience, which feeds into psychology, which is often what I draw on when I'm talking about emotions, to lend some weight behind it so people realize it's not this fluffy, soft, touchy-feely subject. It's actually rooted in very hard science. The thing is with neuroscience, it's developing all the time.
Yes.
Things change all the time. And what's really interesting is even textbooks about neuroscience are often out of date because the science is moving so quickly, and often the rest of the world isn't keeping up with it. So I remember reading one neuroscientist's book, and she was like, neuroscientists know this fact, but if people are psychologists or if they're counselors or if they're, working in this field, they don't necessarily know because it's not necessarily widely known knowledge just yet, which is crazy. And I think the media doesn't help because
No.
they take a little part of it and they'll really blow up the claims behind it. It'll be very, what's the word, exaggerated, or they will miss out the limitations and they're not taking in the whole picture. So yeah, it was a really good decision to do the doctorate. It's been really helpful. But yeah, definitely wasn't really a very thought through decision. And same when I moved to Singapore. I'd gone on a professional development visit to China with the school where I worked at the time. Loved it, loved every part of being somewhere different, somewhere new, just had the most fantastic time. And one of the other teachers on that trip said, "Oh, I spent a week in Singapore," and described it. And I went, "I think I'll live there." And then I
And
did.
and you've been here 14 years.
Yeah, crazy. And in my interview, because I came here with my job before I set up my business, obviously, they were like, "What do you think of Singapore?" And I was like, "Well, I've never been." I'm sure it's very nice. And my thinking was always, but there's always planes home. It's not like once I go, I have to be there forever. I'm only going to go.
I love your attitude. It's just, let me try it. And what's the worst that can happen? I think that's what's got you this far. So tell me, Sarah, 20 years of seamlessly supporting thousands of people with tough emotions, well-being, and resilience. What is that something that you use for yourself? What is it that you do on yourself to make sure you are doing well emotionally?
Yeah, I love this question because I think it's so important to walk the talk. If you're recommending things for other people and they fit that into their week, we're all busy. And I'm all for things that are manageable and easy and simple. So I think one thing that I definitely do a lot is really pay attention to how I'm feeling. I don't necessarily do anything formal with that, but just checking in, working out what my emotions are, how I feel, what I'm bringing to the day. If there's something going on, it's a really good opportunity to explore that and just work out where the stress is coming from. So if I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling stressed, is it about the thing I think it's about? Because often it's underlying reasons, right? So is it about delivering a keynote, for example? Is that what I'm stressed about? Or is the stress actually, I'm worried that I'm not going to rehearse enough and I'm not going to do a good enough job? That's the worry underneath it. So I think it's a good opportunity to dig into that. In the last few months, I've also started journaling, not every morning, most mornings on a weekday when I'm working. And that has been really amazing. The insights that come from handwriting responses to prompts and to questions has been incredible. And that's another research backed tool that really is fantastic. I love doing that in the morning because it sets me up for the day. And it's particularly good if I'm feeling quite stressed, if my thoughts are feeling quite scattered, if I've got a lot to do and I'm in a bit of a whirl thinking, I don't really know where to start. I find that really grounding and it's really good for centering my thoughts, centering my energy, and making me realize what I want to focus on. So journaling absolutely is a very valuable thing. And the final thing I'll mention is, for me, I get a lot of energy and love spending time with other people. And I think I'd really got into the habit over our lockdowns and COVID and the strict regulations and having two children during that time. I really had got into the habit of oh, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered to go out. I'm in the habit of staying in. The thought of big groups, I'm like, oh my goodness. So definitely my New Year's resolution this year, once January 1st came around, was to actually spend some more time with people, actually go out and see more people. And I really noticed that has a massively beneficial impact on how positive I feel. So that's my third and final tip, I would say.
Lovely. And I love about journaling. I am a big, big believer and follower of journaling. I think I have been journaling since I was maybe 11 or 12 years old. I yet have journals that date back 14 years, 14, 15 years, because I feel journaling is the most powerful tool. And, like you said, the writing, it
Mhm.
is so effective because it truly helps with all your senses, the sense of vision, the auditory sense, and your kinesthetic, the hand. There
Mm.
are many proponents who believe that typing is equally good, but I like writing. I really enjoy writing, and my desk has 3 or 4 journals lying at any given point of time. So I'm so glad there is science behind it to say how beneficial journaling is to manage your emotions and feel better and your overall well-being. But
Absolutely.
tell me, Sarah, in all these years, I'm sure you've had a lot of success stories with clients, with people you've worked with. Share something with our audience so they can feel inspired. And, if someone's feeling stuck, it would give them that hope that, yes, I can get better, I can do well, even if the environment is pressurizing and it's hard, but there is a way out. So please share something.
Okay, so quite a lot of the time I'm working with leaders in organizations, and of course, often people are promoted because of technical skill. And so learning to lead people is a whole different ballgame, for example. So I really remember very clearly working with a software engineer who was a leader. And again, I often work with people who are very process focused. So he was very process focused, of course, being a software engineer. And what was amazing about working with him was that he was able to take the strategies we talked about. So one of them was name it to tame it, put a name to your emotions to bring your conscious mind to how you're feeling and connect, that conscious decision making and those emotions and think about how it all works together. So one of the things was name it to tame it. So
May
he'd
may I
literally,
pause you and ask you, what was it that he was experiencing that was not working for him that he came to you?
I think what he realized was that actually the emotional side of things was really important. And for him, he said straight up, that's not a strength of mine. It's something where I know I need to develop that to be an effective leader. So it's funny, although he was like, oh, it's not a strength, he had a lot of insight into his own development and what he needed to develop as a really good leader. And he was saying to me, the great leaders I've had, they've all been really good at this emotional intelligence. So I'd like to learn how to do that too. So yeah, what I loved about working with him was the fact that he took the strategies and then used his very process focus. He used his strengths to apply them in a way that worked for him. And I love when that happens because then what he saw was he was much more aware of his own emotions. And what that meant was he was more, what's the word? He was again more aware of the
Did that
emotions.
make him more empathetic?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One is he realized the role of that emotional contagion. So realize that if you go into work and you're feeling really stressed out and really anxious, that your team are going to pick up on that, especially when you're a leader. And it's one of those things where people go, oh, but I didn't show them. You don't need to show them. We can pick up on these signals anyway. It's in the tone of your voice, it's in your body language, it's in every little nuance of how you're talking and what you're doing. So that emotional contagion, he was more aware of that. He was able to say to his team, you know what, I'm just having a really stressful week. Nothing to do with anyone here, just bear with me. And they were like, oh, sure, great. And that wasn't impacting the mood of the team, which was great. And the other thing was, of course, the more you're aware of your own emotions, the more empathetic it does make you, because you start realizing other people have feelings too.
Mhm.
And when you're able to name your own emotions and accept those difficult emotions, understand that it's normal and we all have these feelings, good, bad, whatever, by just accepting them, you're processing them and helping them to subside. That same process applies to other people too. So, of course, great for empathy, but amazing for building connection, building trust, all of these things that need to be present in teams for psychological safety. So, yeah.
Amazing. What a beautiful story. But what really stood out for me, because it's usually emotions are such a women female centric theme. The fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, are there leaders who are men who are also coming to you to better their emotions, manage them better, so they can deal with their teams in a more empathetic, in a kinder, in a creating a better environment for everyone in the organization? Because it's
Yeah.
generally just, I think it's looked down upon to throw in emotions in the workplace, and I feel there's a shift, there's a slight change that's happening in our environment. What would you say about that?
Yeah, so I think it's interesting. I think we often think, oh, women are emotional and and actually women get judged more harshly for displaying emotions like anger at work compared to men. But leaders generally, it's a very fine line of, well, you can be emotional, but not too emotional, because then we're all going to think that you can't really cope and that we can't trust you and you're not competent at your job. So it's a bit of a balance, I would say, between them. But
Absolutely.
I don't find a huge gender difference in people who come to me, like men and women. What I'm finding is they're focused on developing as a leader and they're focused on doing the best for their people. So it's really that issue of like wherever they are, wherever their starting point is, they're interested in knowing where to move to. And just to answer your second point, what I would say is people are really reluctant to display difficult emotions at work. They see it as being a sign of weakness or
Yes.
being untrustworthy or unprofessional. And especially in Asia, what I see is a real sense of shame attached to those difficult emotions. So people try really, really hard to leave them at the door when they go to work, like almost like taking off a hat. I'll just leave that at home. But that's not the way it works. Like we can't leave those things at home. And actually, there are so many benefits in bringing those emotions to work, but bringing them to work in an appropriate way. So bringing them to work in an appropriate way is actually really good for creating this culture of emotional safety where people are able to build trust and connection. Relationships are impacted positively by our emotions as well. So people feel more supported. They're really empowered to do their best work. They tend to stay for longer. So all of these things are huge advantages.
The
And
attrition
something
rate goes down, the safety improves, all so many positives of bringing your emotions to work in a balanced manner. I think that's what you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Like doing it in an appropriate way, I mean, you are still at work. So yeah, it's
Yes,
doing it in a way that
in an
works.
appropriate way. Yes.
But honestly, I think when people are able to be vulnerable, it helps other people be vulnerable too, and especially when leaders talk about this stuff. There's just this amazing impact because it's that leading by example to say, we all have feelings and that's okay, that's normal, and let's pay attention to that. I think the other thing that's true is that we often think that ignoring our emotions helps them to just go away. But actually, you look at Susan David's research on emotional agility, one thing she says is ignoring emotions only serves to amplify them, just makes them stronger. And those emotions are going to come out sooner rather than later. So it's far better you process them in a way that works and that helps rather than you just blow up at your team or your colleagues over something that's actually unrelated, but it's just served as the trigger for this big emotion.
And I think not dealing with those emotions, shoving them under the carpet, like you said, it's never going to go away. It's just going to get bigger. So facing it as hard as it is, the sooner you do it, the better it's going to be.
Absolutely. And it impacts your physical health as well. What the research has shown is that there's actually a link between trying to squash down emotions, not processing them, not regulating them, and heart health. So people who struggle to regulate those emotions and who try and push them down and ignore them, they actually have a higher incidence of cardiovascular disease, which is quite scary. So it's, our entire body and mind is a system, isn't it? And our brain. I think we underestimate the impact to which everything affects each other.
And
So
how it's all connected.
all connected, all connected. So, you change one thing for the better, you change other things for the better as well, without perhaps realizing. So, yeah.
Wow. So, Sarah, is it safe to say that you want better heart health? Share your emotions, deal with them, and bring them to work in an appropriate manner.
Yeah, it's definitely one factor that will help. I guess there's other things you need to be doing as well, the usual medical advice. But it definitely does make a difference. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Thank you for that amazing knowledge that you shared with our audience today. Tell me, my research showed that you're originally from the UK and have spent 14 years in Singapore. Do you call it home now?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. And I think it brings us back to this question of what actually is home. Pico Aye has a TED talk on this, which is really interesting because he grew up in a multicultural environment. Now, for me, I was born and brought up in the same city in the UK and lived there pretty much my whole life. Went away for university, came back, and I moved to Singapore in my late 20s, intending to be here for 2 years.
Wow.
And so the longest time, I was like, oh, two homes. I have two homes. And I still feel very much like that. I feel like this feeling, it's home for me is more of a feeling. It's that feeling of being really secure and safe and comfortable. So Singapore definitely is home because it's where we live. I met my husband here. He's Australian. It's where both our daughters were born. We've both lived here for a long time. So we do feel really settled here. I think the only unsettling thing about Singapore is when you're not from a country, other people tend to leave and arrive way more than I would have experienced in the UK.
The
I
transient nature of things here. Yes, I've
yeah,
experienced it.
and that makes that's an extra challenge, I guess. But it's just recognizing that's a difficult part of it. But if you try and protect yourself from that, you end up having no friends because you're like, well, I'm not going to get involved with people who are just here for 2 years. You get great opportunities there. So I think the people we've met, and we've now got friends all over the world who've been here and moved to Australia or
Lovely. Yes.
or Europe. So it really is amazing to have that. I'm still firmly rooted in the place where I grew up in the UK
I'm
as well.
sure. That,
I've
that,
still got
that connection is too deep and too strong.
absolutely. My roots are there. My family are there. My friends are all still there. My friends who I've had for 20 plus years are all still there.
That
So
bond.
I love it. Like when I go back and I hear the accent properly, because my accent is softened being here. I hear the proper accent and I can talk in my usual accent, not my Singapore accent. Like, there's definitely facets to both that absolutely feel like home. But I think definitely being here, I got to maybe about 7 or 8 years here. And every time I'd gone back to the UK, I'd thought, I could just move back and fit back into my old life. And I remember going home at about the 7 year mark and thinking, I don't belong here anymore. Like things have moved on in the time that I've been away. People have changed, people have moved on, people's lives move on. It's not static just because you left at a certain point. So I'm sure if we did go back, we'd end up settle back into it. But I remember thinking, oh yeah, that maybe Singapore is home. And I remember having that really big realization out at dinner with a big group of friends and thinking, oh, maybe Singapore's more home than I realized. And there's that, of course, that other aspect of when you live in a country that's not your passport country, it changes you. I just think I'm so lucky that I work with people from all different cultures, all different backgrounds. It changes your worldview on things in a way that I just don't think you can compare to when you have been born and brought up in one place. And that's no disrespect to anyone who lives in the city where they've grown up at all. It's just different. It's just a different way of seeing the world. And I think once you have that different worldview, it's hard to go back to the old way, I guess, like the other way of thinking. So yeah, I definitely noticed that anything with, and we won't get into it now, but anything with politics or anything with, you know, issues that are happening, I guess being here, hearing different sides of every story, you realize there are different facets to what's happening. It's not perhaps as black and white as maybe my thinking would have been when I lived back in the UK. I guess that's the best way to explain it.
Beautifully said, Sarah. Thank you for that. And tell me, what are your thoughts about, you're a mom of two little kids. What are your thoughts on raising multicultural kids here? I in the beginning, I have two kids too. They're 10 and 6. I thought it was a bit challenging till I realized I think it's an acceptance of letting them imbibe the culture of where we are and trying my best to share culture from our own country. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I actually, this was the focus of a lot of my doctorate. I was actually working in an international school at the time,
Wow.
so it was thinking about emotional intelligence to support third culture kids. So our multiple children, you have two, I have two. Um, I honestly think there are huge advantages and there are huge disadvantages, and the key to making sure our children navigate both of those things is being informed. I think like so much to do with parenting and with work, like so much of it is just being informed. So there are huge advantages. 90% of children who grow up outside of their passport country also live away from their passport country as adults. So there's obviously something in that living away. When I was teaching, I loved the fact that, every holiday I'd come back and the kids would be like, I went to the Maldives, I went to Phuket, I went to Canada, I went skiing, I did this. And you think, oh my goodness, they're having these amazing experiences that these God, I was nearly 30 before I was doing any of this stuff. It's incredible. Lots of advantages. I think that acceptance and recognition of different cultures. I love the fact we're in Singapore. It's such a cultural melting pot. My girls love the cultural days at school where they get to experience, all the food.
The racial harmony day our kids go for, so adorable. Yes.
I love it. I love the fact that, they're fascinated by their friends. They're multilingual. Like it's
I
phenomenal.
love the multilingual aspect of it. They're
Okay.
truly global citizens. How beautiful
Yes,
is that?
absolutely. And I think the downside, and this is something that I need to be mindful of, certainly with my own children and certainly with the children that I worked with at school, is that transience, that grief and loss that comes with friends leaving. Like even if you stay in a place, friends can leave.
Yes.
Or we had families who moved on quite regularly. But I think the big issue that causes is that unresolved grief. And again, it's not talking about those emotions. It's just ignoring them, squashing them down, worrying. Like parents often worry, to work with parents as well. Parents often worry that if we talk about it, we're just going to make it worse. And they'd often say to children, just concentrate on the good stuff. But actually, we need to talk about all of these things and process all of these emotions. They can deal with them and they're not carrying it forward because, like I said, it comes out sooner or later. So being able to acknowledge that their friend's leaving and they feel really sad about that. Yeah.
Acknowledge. Don't tell them to think of the positive, but acknowledge this emotions of loss of a friend gone, all of those. That's a great piece of advice, Sarah. Thank you for that, because my own daughter faced it 3 years in a row. For
Mm,
3 years, every year the girl she got close to somehow left.
yeah.
And we spoke about it a lot. My husband would keep saying, are you sure it's the right thing to do? Because she gets really sad when we talk about it. But I'm so glad that you're saying that it is how you should do it, because I was pretty clueless and just went on instinct, because
Mm,
I thought we should address it and let her explain to us what she was feeling. And she was very sad. So,
exactly.
and
And
it was
it's interesting, isn't it? That thing of she looks sad when we talk about it, but actually, it's not talking about it that's making her sad. It's the fact it happened that makes her sad. And actually, in talking about it, what we're helping our children to do, and what you helped her to do, was to walk through that process of, you know what, I'm losing a friend here that I really care about, and that changes things for me, and that's sad. And it's recognizing that that's a normal reaction to friends leaving. I felt it when my friends have left as an adult. So I think teaching children those coping skills is so important because if we don't teach them, they'll come up with their own coping skills, and their own coping skills are not necessarily effective.
I agree.
So I think so important to actually be able to teach them. And of course, well, probably kind of putting myself out of a job, right? Like later on in life, people then get better at navigating through difficult emotions as they're older. But it's also recognizing for them as well that there are good things and bad things, and we can feel positive and negative feelings at the same time. You can feel loss for a friend and grief that they're leaving, but you can also feel excited about what's going to happen next year at school. And those two things can exist together. And I think that's quite difficult for a lot of us, even as adults, to get our head around.
And to accept.
Mm.
Lovely. I'm loving our conversation, Sarah. Thank you. Tell me if you could, go back to your younger days and give your 18-year-old self one piece of advice. What would that be?
Oh my goodness. That's probably a long list. But
Okay, let's shorten it. What's a lesson you've learned in this amazing journey in work? Otherwise, what is some few nuggets? Do share with us with your abundance of
uh,
information.
so I remember doing my I think it was during my coach training. I remember someone saying to me, like, nothing's ever wasted. And I love that because I just think, well, nothing is ever wasted. Like your bad experiences, you learn from them, you develop different skills from them. The good experiences, they give you that, confidence and that motivation and that energy. It's that whole, is it Nelson Mandela? Who was like, you win or you learn. That's that,
I
and
love
nothing,
that.
even the things at the time where you think, oh, this is awful, I don't, romantic breakups or changing jobs, having a tough time at work, you just think, oh, but nothing is wasted because we learn how to deal with things better. We learn different values, like we learn the value of things, like for me, definitely learning the value of things like friendship, really having that reinforced in those tough times. Learning that people will come through for you if you let them and if you ask them. Often if they don't know, they can't help. So I just guess that thing of like nothing's wasted, and even if you have a plan and things don't go according to that plan, it's still not wasted because it leads you to where you are. It makes you into the person you are. And I know for me, certainly, I've done things and I do things in my career now that I never even thought I would do. Like if someone had said to me, you're gonna, in your 40s, you're gonna be a keynote speaker, living in Singapore, married to an Australian with 2 children, I would have like, there's no way ever I would have expected that. So I think, it's understanding that, yeah, you know what, you might have a plan. Sometimes that plan works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it works and it makes you miserable. It wasn't the right thing. So I think just understanding that nothing's wasted. And if you need to change or go a different direction, like do it. It's never,
Beautiful. Thank
never
you.
too late. Never too late.
I'm a firm believer of a similar thing. I believe that there are no failures in life.
Mhm.
There are only wins or life lessons.
Yes.
I think that has really helped me deal with difficult situations. Like you
Mhm.
said, nothing's ever wasted. And I love that. It gives you that hope. It gives you that, that drive to keep going even on the darkest of days. So thank you for this amazing conversation. There has been so much that you shared that we all got to learn, my audience and myself. Thank you, Sarah, for your time and for gracing my show, The Good Coach. Thank you again, and I'm so grateful. See you.
Thank